Hey, what's up, bookworms and sandworms? Mike back to talk a little Dune today. I've got my buddy Chris Ruocchio, author of Sun Eater and also Dune fan extraordinaire, such as myself. And we're gonna be talking about Dune, the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, you're okay with this first part. We're gonna be doing a non-spoiler discussion of it. But I want to let you guys know we are going to be talking about the book. So if you haven't read the book and you still want to, you haven't seen the movie and you still want to, you're okay in the spoiler free part. But when we get to our spoiler section later, we're going to be talking about the book a lot. So if you haven't read the book, you might want to kind of wait for that one. But I'm going too long here. I'm not allowing my guest an opportunity to say how he's doing. What's going on, my man?
All right. How are you?
I mean, it feels weird. I've been waiting for this since I was about Paul's age in the first book for this movie to come out. Now that it's happened, it's just that kind of weird feeling of surreal. I don't know. I
Yes,
don't really know.
sort of like post-apocalyptic in a way. Not like, it like that it was, a bad movie, but like that the time is somehow rolled
Yeah, I
over.
mean, I've just spent all my life, pining for this movie to happen, and now that it's here, I'm just kind of like, I mean, I guess I can start pining for part two. I
Part
hope.
two, yeah. It's
But
weird. It's like being in a new yuga, like Hindu cycle, right? Like it just moved into the next age.
sure, sure. Well, I
Um,
mean, I guess without just flat out coming out and saying it, I think talking with you last night, I was kind of like, did Rockio like this movie? But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Me and my wife went and saw it, and she's never read the book, so I was very interested in her feedback because if I'm being honest, we're not getting a sequel to this if it's just the book fans to go see the movie. We need the casuals to go see it, and they need to understand it. So I'm always wanting to know: one, did it make sense to you? And two, are you interested in more? And all the way home, she kept saying, I really liked the movie, but then it was bitch, 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 bitch. Because she had seen the 84 movie, she'd seen the 2000 miniseries. So she knows the story, but just not like a book reader would. But then she complained about a lot of stuff. So I'm like, I need to talk to more non-book reader people, I think, to see how they feel about it. But it seems like it's overwhelmingly positive from the non-readers.
yeah, that's where I kneecapped myself though, because I went by myself. I'm seeing it again Saturday with at my uncle's because he's got a sort of not quite a drive-in that he's set up at his own house, but he'll hang a screen from his garage door and we'll watch outside, which is pretty cool. So I'm gonna go watch it again with a bunch of people, but I went by myself, so I didn't want anyone to talk to me, right? And I think, like I said, I kneecapped myself because I didn't. I kept the whole time I was like, are people gonna get this? Things are moving very quickly, um, and so I didn't have anyone to ask. But on balance, I thought it was awesome. I will say, and that it's like 70% of the movie that I wanted it to be. By which I don't mean it's a D. I just mean that the 70%, there's like 30% missing. I
Mm,
feel like there's a 3.5 hour cut somewhere that
absolutely.
is really, really amazing that they just couldn't market.
I don't
Um,
know how true this is, but with Momoa, because I mean, this is the same guy, Momoa, who was talking about, oh, we can't wait to start filming part two. And if you know the story, you're like, are you though? But anyway, he was saying that he felt like the ultimate cut of this movie was like 4 hours, I think, or something like that. So
yeah, it was
I
something
hope this does
crazy.
good enough that we get like a director's cut. I mean, like this could be like an 8 hour epic when it's all said and done, maybe, because there was lots of times watching this movie where I'm like, some of the biggest moments feel like they are gone in a flash. Like I think, for example, this I don't think this is a spoiler. Just saying this word, the hunter seeker scene is one of the most tense parts in that entire book. And I felt like in this movie, it's over in 30 seconds. And I'm like, I feel like he's way too big of a fan to not have lingered a little longer than that. And I feel like that with numerous scenes in this movie, like the big famous moments seem like they go by in a flash.
Really fast. Yeah, it was definitely an editing thing because 100% of what I saw was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, there's sort of especially in the middle third, it moves really fast. Once they get back out into the desert, again being vague, everything was perfect again. But there was a little crunch there in the middle because there's a lot of stuff that has to happen. And I thought, two movies like that's where you want to spend some time, not on Caladan and not just doing the wandering, point A to point B stuff. And that wasn't exactly where the mix was. And so I think it's probably down to editing there. And I know there are probably a bunch of people listening despairing already and or writing nasty things about both of us in the comments. But I can't say enough that I really loved the movie. I just wanted there to be more of it.
Yeah, I want people to understand we're both humongous fans of the book. So it's going to be hard for us to distance ourselves from those as just a movie on its own. Like it comes a part where it's like it's hard for me to separate myself from that. Like when I went and saw Lord of the Rings, and that's something that the only other thing I'd read as many times as I'd read this, I was like, I could distance myself enough to say, okay, I think people who aren't even into fantasy are going to get this. With this, I'm like, I'm so close to it, I don't even know. So
Yeah,
only feedback I got on the way home was from my wife, and one of her big complaints was I didn't feel like any of these characters that passed away in the movie. I didn't care because I didn't. She's like, two of them I didn't even know their names. So I don't know if that's really an actual problem or she's being really nitpicky because I was being really nitpicky. I'm not sure. So I need to. You guys, please let us know in the comments how you thought about these things.
yeah, and there were a couple of characters that just sort of dropped off the map about midway through the movie and did not turn up again. And I won't say who it is, just again to sort of protect people's sensitive ears. But there were two relatively major characters who just stopped doing things. And I think they're threads in the book where they're trying to survive and they end up variously, siding with a different faction or another. Were definitely things that have to be on the cutting room floor, right? Because there were a couple characters who were maybe in 5 minutes of the movie, right? 10 minutes of the movie. And I was like, where did they go? Like especially the two I'm thinking of they have parts to play still. And if it's all getting moved to part two, it seems a bit like
right. I've been telling myself, hey, there's a lot of stuff they might be doing back heavy with some of these characters, like we've talked about some things with Lady Jessica that weren't in this part, that were in that part of the book and stuff like that. That might still be happening in part two. So I don't want to. I feel like it's almost like kind of grading on an incomplete here because some stuff might just be shuffled around. Because I mean, like for example, when I went and saw Lord of the Rings, I was upset that they didn't have Frodo and Shelob at the end of Two Towers. It didn't happen until Return of the King in the movies, and I thought that was just like such an awesome cliffhanger. But over time, I've been fine with it because structurally it made sense the way they're doing it. So maybe they're doing some stuff like that.
Yeah, and we know they're doing some like that, right? Because Fade Ralpha is not in the movie at all.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think no Emperor, no Fade Ralpha really. I don't know. I think that's an interesting choice. I mean, maybe they just thought the cast was getting too big if they didn't know they were going to have a second half, or maybe. I mean, if we're being led to believe that movie number 2 is going to be all about Chani, well, then okay. Well, maybe it's going to be about the Fade and Chani story. Maybe I don't know.
Well, we've talked about that too, right? Like, I'm sure that what he meant by that, and I know he's clarified it a little bit, but what I'm sure he means there is as Paul becomes more of a larger than life figure, we need to see him, from the human level, and that's Jessica and Chani, right? And so we need to see Paul more from the outside. Because I tell you, writing characters with superhuman abilities from the inside of their heads is a lot harder than just looking at them from outside.
Sure.
So I wonder, if it's not the right way to tell the story from the outside, right?
All right, so how about we do like a good and bad kind of thing? And
okay,
I think that's the best way to do it. These are kind of our overall thoughts or our knee-jerk reactions. Let's start with the good. Let's hang on to the viewers as long as we can here. But the good with me, look, the spectacle, obviously that was not underplayed. It looks massive. Everything, I haven't seen any stuff look this epic since Lord of the Rings. Everything looks huge. I do kind of still see where you're coming from with the lived-in things. That is kind of a hit and miss, I think, on that. A lot of the things exactly just ripped out of my mind's eye. I mean, like Arakeen, I remember I leaned over to my wife and I said, it's not quite, it's a little more Aztec-y, I think, than I kind of imagined. But I mean, it looked massive and stuff like that. That's what I want. I want everything to feel huge. The costuming looked like otherworldly. That's what I want. I didn't want everything just to look Middle Eastern. That'd be like what they did in '84, or they just went completely weird. I wanted it to just kind of have a life of its own. I felt like it did that. And cast, I have no problems with any of the casting in this. I think
they were all great.
They all put on good performances. They're all believable together. I love the look. I love pretty much everything about it aesthetically is just stunning. One of the little things that you won't hear people talk about very much, except us just crazy spice nerds, is just every time you would get close down to the sand, you would just see like the flecks of spice. At least in IMAX, I could see it. And it was just absolutely gorgeous. So I don't know how much of that is well, obviously the spices, but just the screenshots of the landscapes of the desert and stuff. How much of that is actually just was it Jordan where they recorded
It's
this?
Jordan, yeah, it's Wadi Rum, the same
If
place
that's
they filmed
really
Lawrence of Arabia.
yeah. So I don't know if that's actually what it looks like, but it's absolutely stunning. I don't know how much was assisted by special effects or not, but just the amount of practical effects in this. I love that everything looks analog. Nothing looks super futuristic. I mean, even like the floating lamps with Paul looks something like that's very believable. I love all that stuff.
Yeah, and oh man, the dials on the ornithopters too. Like
Yeah.
I'm such a like geek for the sort of analog old displays.
Yeah, it
One of
looks
the things
very
I like
Return
about
of the
Star
Jedi.
Wars so much.
I love that. I mean, that was something when I got to see that preview that I said, it's like, I love that the inside of the ornithopter didn't look super futuristic. Everything looks very old, very analog, a world that, post machine kind of would be. So I loved everything about it. And was I lying about the ornithopters, or do they look freaking real? It's like,
They
I
they
don't know
look
where the
perfect.
CG begins and the real practical effects ends. Are these things really flying?
Maybe I know. So I know. I think it was Timothee Chalamet said he only did one scene in like a green screen room, and I don't know which scene that might have been.
Probably the dust storm, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, probably. Good call. The rest of it was either on location or on a set.
If that's a
Obviously,
spoiler, guys, it's a desert. There's going to be dust storms. Okay, I don't think that's a spoiler.
Yeah. Spoiler. Sand.
There
Nothing
is sand in this movie.
every direction. You know.
So what would you say was the good for you besides the soundtrack?
Well, I like the bagpipes a lot, actually. But no, I'm with you on the cast. I was a little hesitant about Jason Momoa early on. I think he was awesome.
Yeah.
I especially think Rebecca Ferguson was awesome in this movie. She's really, really good. So was Timothy. So was for as little as they're in the movie, Stilgar and Gurney were great too. Oscar Isaac was also amazing. He carried a lot more of the movie than I kind of thought he was going to. In a lot of ways, I won't say it's his movie, but it is still his movie. To maybe the same extent it's Jessica's movie. They really, really give Duke Leto, I think, a strong role. I really liked a lot of the details too, right? Like Duke Paulus and his bull, right? Like there was a lot of attention to like those sorts of details, and that motif kept recurring in a way that was really strong. The Harkonnens were great. I wanted more of them.
Definitely.
And we're gonna get more of them. It seems like part 2 is happening, but I don't have a bad thing to say about any of the performances. Costumes were great too. A lot of the set pieces. I kind of never mind. The shields were perfect too. Finally, somebody got the shields, right and in a way that
and they explained it in a way where everybody could understand it. Like in a world where you're back to hand-to-hand fighting, like it's just futuristic. Why are we still hand-to-hand fighting in the shield? It shows why we're back to, basically projectile weapons are damn near worthless at this point.
Yeah, I kind of wish there'd been fewer of they have like missiles that will like bore through the shield. They kind of like missed the point for me. So I wouldn't have maybe done the big battle scenes with drill missiles, but they were cool.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I was like, more ground, hand-to-hand fighting, please. They were still cool, right? You've got like these darts, boring their way through and stuff. Like that's neat. All the technology was cool. The carryalls were really neat. When the balloons went up to lift that's awesome. Like really.
What about I forget what they were actually calling them, like the little movie projector thing that's basically providing exposition in a way that seems seamless. Like Paul would actually be interested in learning about these
film books.
Yeah, that's so cool. And Gurney has his OC Bible. See, little things like that the big hardcore fans are just going to geek out over, and everybody else be like you see the picture of Duke Leto's father. It's like a big deal in the book. So seeing little details like that, casual people are like, who cares? There's a statue of a bull, and we're just like, oh my god, So little details like that, you can tell only someone who loves this book would have included that stuff.
Yeah, and the other thing that was really, really good is this is probably the most faithful adaptation of a text that I've seen since Lord of the Rings.
Absolutely.
Like on a line for line level, the script is cribbing dialogue, right? Now, some things are moved around. There are a couple moments where they're like, hey, that's Thufir's line.
Yeah.
Paul, is back to the door, that bit and stuff like that. But it was the line, right? And if you, in like every scene, except the ones that they've added that are totally new, they're borrowing dialogue, word for word. They didn't shy away from any of the weird terminology either. I was not expecting to hear Lisan Al Gaib. I was certainly not expecting to hear Eyes of the Abad.
Yeah, and so much Shai Halud. Yeah,
and more than that, we got a working explanation of paracompasses, right, and why they need them instead of regular ones, which was a level of detail that I was not expecting. And so that was all great. The Bene Gesserit stuff was great. I think they explained that. This is the best version of the voice that I've seen from any of the adaptations.
Yeah. I tried to explain how it was to my wife before she saw it, and I was like, it's like they talk, but then it like comes from over here somewhere. It's really, really wicked the way they do the voice.
It was really neat. I really liked that. I really liked. Geez, I just had a fuse blow. But I really liked a lot of the set building too, right? Like the ecological testing station was probably my favorite place in the whole movie. It just felt so big and open, in a way that like I think worked against, say, the castle in Arakean. Like that was too sterile to be a house people lived in, which was one of my concerns going in. And maybe this is a way to segue, but there were some sets that felt like they were sets, like they were just a little bit too empty. Castle Caladan was awesome, but the house in Arakean, maybe you could say, well, they're moving in and they never got a chance to finish moving in, but it didn't feel like a house. It felt like a bunch of bunkers. And, I know that's what they were going for with all the Soviet brutalism, but I would have liked to see, more sort of granular world building. I would like to have been on the ground car going through Arakean and seeing, water sellers and spice vendors. And I would have liked to see a little bit more of normal people and to make Arakean a real place, which is one of the things that the miniseries did really, really well. Even though, they had like no budget.
Yeah, they had the scenes like where they're like taking the rags that had been used with the water and rinsing the water out of it to give, stuff like that. Little details.
More of that would have been good. Yeah. But like I said, everything that's there is pretty much perfect as far as I'm concerned.
I was actually surprised to see Seleucus Secundus in this. I didn't think that. I mean, I saw that scene in the trailer. I just thought
that it was Gidi Prime.
Yeah, I thought that was like when they were arriving. I had no idea we're actually going to see the planet there, and they're having like the craziest metal concert I've ever seen.
Yeah, they're listening to the Who.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it? So yeah, but little things like that. Some of the shot for shot stuff straight from the book, guys, that's great. But some of the scenes that they've made new for this movie are really good. I think about one between Paul and Leto in the I guess you call it the house graveyard at the beginning, and the scene they have, that's one of my favorite parts of the entire movie. That speech between them is just gorgeous. And that's, to me, it was like, okay, they have really established a good father-son relationship with them just with that one scene. And I think it does it better than the 84 movie immediately right there. I believe that these two genuinely care about it. He loves his father and the father loves the son quite a bit. So I think that was brilliant. I love new stuff like that. I love that they didn't shy away from Missionary Protectiva this time. They really kind of got it out there about why these people believe this. It isn't just because that whole the white savior thing is going to come up a lot with people. They love to bring that up, and I think it kind of got out in front of that by explaining what all of the
religion in the Dune universe is a cynical, fake plan made up by an order of genetic witches.
How about that?
There's no like who are themselves atheists because none of it's real.
Yeah, deep stuff, guys.
Yeah,
okay. Now, when I move into the bad stuff here, guys, I just want to talk about. I don't necessarily think that this is bad. This is stuff as a book fan that is a gripe more for me. I don't think there's anything in this movie I would call bad. There's not a moment in here where I'm like, that shouldn't have been in the movie, except maybe some of the sound mixing. And again, that could have been a theater problem for me. The biggest problem for me with this is the soundtrack. I like Hans Zimmer quite a bit. I know you're not a fan. I like him a bit. And I was ecstatic when he was hired for this role. His soundtrack's too goddamn loud in this. It is too loud. I mean, there's a couple times. My wife is the ultimate turn it down person. So she was struggling in IMAX. Me, I'm never like that. And I was like, oh my God, I can't hear what they're saying right now because it's having these really loud, bombastic sounds while Paul and Jessica are whispering to each other in a tent. And I'm like, I can't hear what they're saying right now. So
Yeah,
basically,
that scene
anytime it
was a
showed
little.
captions on the bottom, I was pleased to see subtitles. So I was like, maybe I understand what they're saying. I've read this and I know what they're saying. My wife's like, I can't wait to watch this again on HBO Max with subtitles, so I know what they're saying.
Oh, that was another thing I liked real quick is they did the Atreides hand
The hand
talk,
signs, yeah.
and they did Chekhov's outright, and I think Dr. Yue was speaking some form of like future Mandarin. It sounded very Chinese to my ear. I'm not 100% sure if there was a second language, because I think the guy who did the Dothraki language for Game of Thrones did the languages for this. That was all really cool, and that was handled. That stuff, especially the hand talk, covered a lot of the ground that the Lynch voiceovers covered less elegantly. So it sort of like fixed that problem with the Lynch movie, which I thought was really neat. But as far as like, yeah, the music goes, the sound mixing was mostly fine for me. There are a couple places where maybe it was too off, but I just don't really I don't like Hans Zimmer that much anyway, because he does these very like soundscapey, soundtracks, and I would like a tune. I'm just from the John Williams school.
Yeah, no, I was saying I wish there was like themes, like give me the Paul Atreides theme, or something like give me the Fremen theme. That's kind of what I was hoping for, and we don't get that.
Right, because like 80% of why I think Star Wars lives in so many people's, brains is because the music is so infectious. And this doesn't offer anything comparable to that. Now, I don't want it to imitate Star Wars, but there's not like really a motif or anything you can latch onto and hum later. And when you don't have something like that, it's harder to have the film hangover, right? And so I feel like he kind of dropped the ball in that department. And I mean, I don't know that I'm surprised. Like the Interstellar soundtrack's very good, right? But I don't remember it the way that I remember Howard Shore or Gregson Williams or John Williams, right? And so that was a little off. There were a couple bits that I really liked. I liked the like Benny Gesserit like fast whispering thing. And that reminds me the thing where my fuse blew a minute ago. I like the Other Memory stuff too, where you've got all these, old lady voices like whispering prophecies into Paul's ear as he's having his visions. That was awesome and the best version of Other Memory that we've seen so far, in my opinion. So that was cool. But the music kind of let me down. There's except the bagpipes. Like I said, I like the bagpipes, and I don't know why. But they came out, and when there's a bit where the bagpipe music plays again while they're all charging, and I was like, freedom. Have my Braveheart flashbacks, but I dug that. But most of the soundtrack was kind of a letdown for me.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like I'm not humming any tune from that movie in my head right now, and I get the decision to go more atmospheric or whatever, but I just wish there was some memorable motifs or something in there that I would be kind of. I mean, like after the first time I saw Fellowship of the Ring, I'm like, do 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 do. You just got that tune always in your head. I was like, there's nothing from this will I ever find myself listening to this while I read or listen to this, while I'm doing stuff around the house. I mean, it's like, no, this is like if I'm taking a drive in the desert or something, maybe I'll put this on. I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah, there just wasn't anything to latch onto with the soundtrack. And it's funny because if you've seen the featurette, right, Hans Zimmer's like, I wanted to, not use violins and traditional instruments because this is the future and they'll have new instruments. And like if this is what people are listening to in the future, like
I'm glad I live in the now.
Exactly. Yeah, like that's not. I'm not inspired. And also, if you're gonna make instruments, why did you not make the balisette?
I don't get that at all.
I
guess maybe they thought it would make Gurney look less macho or something.
Maybe Josh Brolin can't sing. Like I don't know, or can he? Has he done it in another movie I'm unaware of?
I think so.
But because if he has, then where's that?
I've been watching Josh Brolin since The Goonies, and I don't remember him ever playing ever singing or dancing or anything. But
yeah, if Hans Zimmer was excited about making space instruments, like there's one you could have made, and also the book has references to actual instruments. There's a Rebec, like that's
maybe they're saving it for part 2 for going to have some big slow jam, you know.
Yeah, maybe.
It would be a
'Cause,
big hit, like toss a coin to your Witcher or something. It'll be
yeah,
like a big radio
Galatian
hit.
girls.
For me, now this one again, this might have been my theater because everybody last night was telling me they didn't have this problem. There's parts of this movie where I feel like it's so damn dark. I felt like I was watching Batman v Superman. It was so dark. I was like, this is a movie that you guys have been selling as visually stunning. See it in IMAX, and it's going to be so dark sometimes. I can't see the giant freaking sandworm because it's so dark. It wasn't this dark in the trailer. I was like, why is it this dark now? I understand there's not a lot of natural lighting in the desert outside of the moonlight, you know. I get what they were going for there, but from them with the sandworm all the way through the last little conflict that we have before the end of part one here, it was so dark. I'm serious. I was like, I feel like they need to turn the slider up on the brightness a little bit here or something because it feels like I'm watching a Zack Snyder movie.
Yeah, it was a little dark on my end. I've since streamed it just to double check that because I saw you talking about that last night. It looked okay here. So I don't know if that was just a theater thing and part of my problem too is I think I was like a row further forward than I should have been because there was a little bit of like I can't quite take it, you know.
I might have just been bad seating because I haven't been to an IMAX theater since my wife went to see Alice in Wonderland. I think that was like 11 years ago or something like that because that's her favorite book. So I was like, well, we saw your favorite book in IMAX. We got to see my favorite book in IMAX, you know. So it was just kind of like a fun little thing there. So maybe I just didn't get optimal seating for IMAX. I mean, I wasn't too close. But for all I know, sitting in the middle might not be the best place for IMAX screens. I don't know this stuff.
Yeah, there was a little bit like after they left Caladan in particular, where I was like, would it have killed them to have a little more color in this movie? Arrakis is very like brown and white, and there's like nothing else. Like all the natives are wearing the same white robes, right? If they're in the city, and then the same, you know, still suits. And like you can maybe make the case like, oh, well, this is a desert planet. What are they making dyes out of? And that was like a deliberate decision. But I would have liked, you know, a little red somewhere, right? And that's and if I have to pick on like one costume, I wish the Baron had been a little bit more richly dressed.
Yeah.
He's kind of wearing like Ebenezer Scrooge's nightgown.
Yeah, he's wearing a gown. That's what my wife. And God damn it, why can't anybody get the suspensors right? The Baron cannot fly, you guys. I don't get this. I don't know why this is so hard for everyone.
I don't either, but I will say this is by far the coolest use of the not understanding suspensors. He's actually frightening in this as opposed to silly and like campy in kind of the other two versions. And I think that was a better direction to go in, you know, and he drifts along the banquet table. That was really cool. It's not right because like all he's doing, right? And again, I'm with you. I don't know why anybody.
Just because his knees can't handle his weight, you guys. He literally floats like this far off the ground. He just can't put any pressure on his joints.
It carries him. He like has a walker basically.
Like when he goes over, like he goes over the table in that one scene. That was right. That was perfect. That's how it should have done. But then it's like, okay, he's gonna fly to the ceiling now. Okay, all right.
Yeah, it did have some like cool kind of horror movie imagery in a couple places, with him sort of like floating above like his men and stuff, like he was hanged almost. I'm like, oh, that's spooky. But it wasn't quite what I wanted. Now, that's not to take away from his performance, which was awesome.
No, he's great. He's great. Even though there are a couple times because of the voice modulation, I'm not quite exactly sure what he said, but. Again, you know what? All these years of with kids, guys, I listen with everything now with subtitles on because sometimes you just can't hear. So I think I've just gotten used to having subtitles with everything. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe my hearing has gotten worse. I don't know. Maybe that's why I struggle so bad with audiobooks. The last thing with me here, and again, this is just someone who's read the book having some issues here. I do feel like for a 2.5 hour movie. The character development was pretty poor for a lot of people outside of Paul and Jessica. I was like, I don't feel like you really got to know very many of these characters. My biggest one's Yui. That's a very important character that if you didn't know he was an important character, the movie sure didn't tell you. Thufir is a cameo in this. They take away certain scenes that really develop the relationship between Thufir and Jessica, which is super important, by the way. And there's a very famous dinner scene from the movie that is not in this, and it could have really, really helped fix all of these problems because I think that's where you could have really developed a lot of these characters during that scene. And I just hope that there is a director's cut where I hope they did record that I'm saying I hope they did record that scene and we get to see it someday, because that's just wild. I can't believe that scene was removed if by choice. Like I said, we're not even going to include it in our screenplay, because that would just be a weird decision, I think. So with me, it's just a lot of scenes, like I said, they feel rushed. And it's weird, a 2.5 hour movie to say anything feels rushed. But yeah, like I said, my wife said, hey, this character died, and I didn't feel anything, and I didn't care. And I think that's kind of bad. So again, it might be just a part of them recording this in 2 parts like they did. I don't know. Or it might just be because, you and I are so familiar with these characters at this point. Maybe I was wanting more than was needed. I don't know. I'm not hearing these complaints a lot from very many people who haven't read it outside of my wife, but I do feel like that's something that could have been done better. And a lot of those scenes, like they're just shortened, like the stuff with shout out Mapes. It's like the scene starts to be there. I feel like we get that scene and then we cut to the next scene and the rest of the scene isn't there anymore. So I'm like you. I feel like a lot of this is on the cutting room floor, and we're going to see it somewhere eventually. The movie just got to make enough money for them to agree to let him have the extra money to finish the special effects and stuff on some of these scenes. But I hope there is a director's cut of this, even if it's just this part eventually, because I feel like a lot of the character work got left.
I'd really like to see that. I don't want anyone to come away from this thinking that it's a bad movie, right?
Not at all. Again, we love the movie. The guys, this is what you do when you do a review: is you do the good sides and the things that didn't quite work for you.
This is why my brother hates going to movies with me, because I'll be like, yeah, it was good. And then I'll talk, for 2 hours about all the things that could have been better. And I haven't actually gotten to my big things yet, because there's a sort of spoiler territory. But everything that's here is awesome. If you like the book, you will really like it. I don't think it does anything wrong. But there's some stuff that's missing, and now part of that is just, this is a very large, complicated book, and we have to try and make it fit on the screen. And there are going to be people who are going to make the case maybe there should have been a miniseries or an outright show. We should have just had Dune on HBO, right? Maybe, right? But I still think that the cinema is an important art form, and I think this is as good an adaptation as I was expecting to get. I don't know that I expected to get a 4-hour cut. If we do ever get the the Peter Jackson edition, so to speak, that'll be great. Maybe, like we said, a lot of this stuff's going to be, in part 2, because I will say this is the most part one movie I have ever seen. This really is half of a movie, right? It's not the first movie and then the second one. Like, this by no means stands on its own. We need to get the second one. It looks like we're going to get the second one, but it's going to be one of those things where, probably watch them, if not back to back, definitely on consecutive nights for the rest of my life.
Oh no, I look forward to the fan edit where they'll make it one 6-hour movie. It'll be
yeah, you got that too, right? But it absolutely, like I said, it's the most part one I've ever seen, and so it is hard to make a lot of the evaluations that we've been making, I think, fairly, because it so much depends on that second half. And I do think like I said, my principal complaint here is that I wanted more. And if they've left me wanting more, they've done their job, right? I think visually and in terms of fidelity to the source material and the characters and all of that, it's as good, an adaptation as we could have gotten. And I'm really happy with it. I just, I'm not so keen on 3 years for the next one or however long it's going to be.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just think about it. It's got to get greenlit first. Then they got to actually write a screenplay. Hopefully they got a screenplay already written, or a treatment at least.
It sounds like that it already was.
They won't have to do the costuming again and all that stuff. They won't have to do the locations again and stuff. So, I mean, I think that part 2 is going to happen because they realize there is a lot of interest here. This is special circumstances because, they've already delayed it a year, things like that. I do think that they're taking into consideration how much it gets watched on HBO Max. And this is going to be watched a ton on HBO Max. It is, just out of curiosity. People are going to be like, look, there's a movie like Bright that came out on Netflix, which was not that great of a movie. And you know what? Millions of people watched it because it was on Netflix. They had already paid for the service. They got to watch it. Hey, we're watching a free movie. You think people aren't going to watch Dune? So I'm not worried if they're really counting people watching this on HBO Max as people paying to see the movie. I think that they'll be fine with it. But also, part 2 is not going to cost as much. There's not nearly as much special effects shots. There's a lot of time in caves and sieges and things like that. They can do all this stuff. They can take shots. And there are some big things that they're going to have to do, obviously, but I think it would be much cheaper to make than this movie. Hopefully they got everybody contracted.
Well, a lot of the advanced work, the R&D, if you will, has been done, right? Like the ornithopters are designed, right? But also, the other thing that a lot of people in their doomerism are sort of, leaving out is that it's already, outperformed expectations in Europe and Southeast Asia and the other places. It's now, I think, almost double what people were thinking. It had higher day one ticket pre-order sales than James Bond did, and Venom 2. And Venom 1 was a really big deal when it came out in terms of box office numbers.
So I did 5 million on its Thursday nights viewing, and they said 30% of that was from IMAX screens. So if that trend keeps up, obviously it's going to make a lot more money than it usually would. But again, I feel like they said it's just like the fourth straight week with the movies going to open in the 30 to 40 billion. So yeah, it sounds like theaters are rebounding as they knew it would. Our actual the guy who, I don't even know what you call him, they don't have like maitre d at theaters, whatever, the manager of the theater, whatever, just before it started, like just talked to the crowd, which was shoulder to shoulder with you guys, and said that this is the biggest crowd they've had for a movie since before the virus shall not be named. So that's encouraging.
That's good.
Yeah.
Mine, I went to just a regular showing because my IMAX is downtown and I'm not trying to drive downtown. And so it was like maybe 2/3 full, which for like Thursday night on sort of the edge of town was so bad. So I'm optimistic about that, and we'll certainly know by like Tuesday, how the weekend went, and it really sounds like they're set on doing it already. Did you see where the WB head was like, well, as for whether or not there's going to be a second one, if you've seen the ending to the first one, you'll have your answer, right?
Well, that sounds like more of an absolute than anything. So
yeah, it's very promising.
I feel like you would have had a lot more of this cast like begging people to go see it if they didn't know they were getting a part 2. I'm pretty sure, because Denis V was very, very vocal about not wanting this to go to streaming, and then all of a sudden he just quit overnight. So I think they pretty much said, if you stop running your mouth, we'll give you your part 2.
I bet they did. That's a good call. I bet that's what happened.
Now, as far as
they were also in for a TV show, right? They've already invested in at least research, pre-production.
I think they know they have a big property on their hand, and it has a huge universe, even if half of it is from his idiot kid. But I really, I said way back when I was podcasting, and my friend was like, "Well, what about this Sisterhood of Dune show that they want to do?" I was like, in my opinion, that's something they gave Brian Herbert to keep him off the movie set. And seeing his name in the credits, I was like,
well, he's his kid,
I know.
He's gonna get in,
I'm being a jerk. I saw Kevin J. Anderson was a consultant. Anyways, guys, I obviously clearly recommend you go see it. In fact, I implore you, please go see it, because it's if you're a fan of cinema, I think you're going to enjoy it. It's going to be probably the biggest spectacle that you've seen since maybe, I guess, after post Lord of the Rings, maybe like Revenge of the Sith. I guess you would say that was kind of a big visual spectacle, but it looks better than that. Here's the thing. Every one of these ships in this movie look magnificent. I mean, they just look monstrous. Like the ambassador of the Emperor, when that ship lands, it's just like, oh my God, it's just gigantic. And I just feel like nothing else ever shot by him. But like, you look at Arrival, which he also did. The ships look decently sized in that. They look small compared to this. And no, bigger doesn't always mean better, but to me, it makes it feel otherworldly. And Dune is very otherworldly. I love the way that everything looked in this. So I'm itching to kind of talk about some spoilers now. So I think we're going to kind of wrap this one up. I'm not ready to give it like a something out of 10. I'm just going to say, as a book lover, I'm very, very happy. But if we don't get part 2, I'm not going to be consolable. I'm just going to be, I'm going to go emo or something. I'm going to turn to emo Batman that you guys all want to go see.
There we go. Got my hair for the emo role. Yeah. But no, I think I'm going to go see it at least once, maybe twice more in theaters too. And so it's worth going. It's worth going to go see. Don't let my nitpicking put anyone.
Definitely, guys. We're nitpicking because we are huge fans of the book. This is an amazing movie. But I do want to hear more from people who haven't seen it or haven't read it to know what they're thinking. I have a small sample size. I'm going off my Discord, and everyone that hasn't read it on there seems pretty blown away by it. So,
no, yeah, it's a good sign. It's a good sign.
So okay, guys, that's it for now. Catch up tomorrow, where I'm going to put out the spoiler talk, which is going to be a lot more in depth. But I implore you, please see the movie first. Please read the book first, because we are going to get into those things, and I don't want to get told that I ruined the book for you. But again, can you really spoil a book that's, was this like 50, 60 years old, 50 years old? So I don't know. I'm still like that with the Lord of the Rings. I don't like to spoil Lord of the Rings for everybody. And those books are ancient and the movies are 20 years old at this point. But I'm still like, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. So I implore you, please, to wait. So, okay, I guess catch us there.
Yeah, to be continued.
Part 2.